if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you about it. It's free, which is amazing. And there are these really cool creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it's easy to be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. And you get to make money with no minimum listenership, which is really cool. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started right away.
Yoga teachers, mindfulness leaders, and energy workers, are you ready to stop side hustling and start making an income doing what you love? Welcome to the Marketing Off the Mat podcast. Each week, your host, Jessica Cross, dives into conversations with successful creatives in wellness, business, marketing, and more to uncover practical methods to take your business from A to B and have some fun along the way. Grab some tea and pull up a seat. Let's dive into this episode.
Welcome back to Marketing Off the Mat. This is Jessica. I'm so glad that you're here because I have a great show for you today. I have Sandy Raper from Sandy Raper Yoga and the Beyond Yoga Teacher Training podcast on the show today. And we are talking all about longevity and sustainability as teachers. So she is so passionate about teaching her teachers to not only be a good teacher, understand what it is with their teaching, and have the tools and accessibility to do so with a great skill. But she teaches her teachers how to build a sustainable business. And that comes with the seasons of life, and that might change and mold as we move through the different portions of our life. And she is here for all of that. She takes us on a journey from her early days of teaching, how she got exposed to yoga and how she went through her teacher training process, all the way to leading her own teacher trainings and starting her business and mentoring teachers. It's such a great episode. I hope that you'll take a listen. Let's dive in. Hey, Sandy, how are you?
Hi, Jessica. I am doing well. I'm excited to spend some time with you this afternoon. Well, it's afternoon where I am, but I'm just glad to be a part of this and excited for our conversation.
Oh my goodness, me too. I love the work that you do and the messages that you're sharing out into the world. And I just knew that you had to be on this show and have more people exposed to you. So thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. And thank you again. I appreciate it as well. And I am appreciative of the work you do as well. And, we're in this together and trying to connect yoga, to as many people as possible. And I'm a huge advocate for it. That's what I tell people. So I'm excited. Yeah. After 20 years now, it's like, yeah, I'm a huge advocate for this. You really should try it.
Yes. And I think the more, and it's exactly what we're talking about too, the more teachers that we have that are able to continue to teach in a sustainable way, the more people yoga reaches. So it's perfect.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about you and your career journey. I know you have a lot of experience in the yoga space, and I would love to know a little bit more about you and what brought you here to today.
Well, I'll try to condense this. I am a talker and I'm a details person. So I try to edit myself sometimes, but then I don't want to take out or leave out any of the flavor or the colors of things that I could share that hopefully might inspire someone listening or just give them a better glimpse into who I am. I think for me, I obviously have a lot of roles that I play. I'm a mom of 3 very active, athletic boys. And so I am right now currently in a season where I am not teaching classes right now because I am in baseball season is what I tell people. But so I have that going on. I have been teaching, I've already mentioned, for 20 years. And maybe a key point to kind of give a start point of how that showed up for me, I never saw on the radar of becoming a yoga teacher. Actually, I worked in the kind of professional realm of clothing and textiles and merchandising. That's what I went to college for. And then I also had a parent, my mom, who lived with multiple sclerosis. And so she passed away, actually. It's been 20 years now. And that 20-year mark that I'm meeting is a catalyst in many ways of things that changed for me that year. And part of that was her death. I had been a caregiver for her the last 5 years of her life. And so when she passed 20 years ago, I was left with trying to figure out, I had 2 small children, and I was like, what am I going to do? Do I go back into the merchandising retail realm that I had left? And fortunately, I had some space and some time to figure out some things and not rush into anything. And so I did what kind of we do when things like that happen, I believe, is I sought some normalcy or a routine of what I had been doing. And I went to the gym. So I went to the gym and I saw this like group class thing taking place of these people doing these very interesting things with their body. Well, come to find out, it was yoga. And I'm a curious person. So I'll tell people my start point with yoga was coming from curiosity. And so I thought, why not? I've got some time. I've got some extra time. Let me roll into this class, see what it is. Well, that's the start point. And I began the yoga practice shortly after my mom's passing. And so to me, the yoga practice has been a gift. It helped me in so many ways, and subtly, it helped me in my grieving process with my mom, and continues to do that. And so from there, it just rolled into a dedication to the practice. I, about 6 months later, rolled into my first teacher training, terrified that I was going to step out and now teach. But it really, for me, Jessica, became, I was trying to seek and find what would I do now with my time, with who I was and wanting to serve and connect in the service of what I felt I had been able to encounter with my mother and taking care of her. And for me, becoming a yoga teacher in that pursuit, it was born out of that death experience with her. That, you know, kind of here we are 20 years later, I'm still teaching. I train others to teach. I mentor teachers, and it's still a gift to me. And it's all about service and connection. So I know that was probably a lot, but that's kind of somewhat in a nutshell to share with you kind of where it started and where I am now.
Yeah, no, it was the perfect amount. It was absolutely perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I can so resonate. And I know many of the people that are listening right now can resonate too. It's yoga often finds us in these points where, you know, we're not exactly sure where to turn, and we don't know what that thing is going to be. And it somehow presents itself in the way that we're able to accept it. And
yeah, and I love that you said it, you know, we find, and I often say it found me. Like I wasn't seeking, I didn't think, oh, I need grief counseling. I'm a very independent person because I'm also an only child. So that, and having a mother, you know, with a disability, I was very independent young. And so it's kind of like, I got this, I don't need help. Yeah. But it found me and became something that, you know, like I said, I guess I was seeking it, but not really. It was in a subtle realm, and I feel like it found me. So I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's so true. And it does find us, and it presents in that perfect time when we might be feeling that it's, you know, things aren't so perfect, so to speak, like quote unquote.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you jumped in this teacher training, you've really immersed yourself into this world. And now not only did you teach, that you start to teach other teachers how to teach and become a teacher of teachers. And I'm sure throughout this process, you know, not only through your career, but also having a family and, you know, processing the emotions of your mother's passing and, you know, all the things that go into being a human. There may have been a point too where you realize, like, you need some sustainability in your life, in your career, so you can continue to share this message that has been so pivotal for you with yoga.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, you know, I think what we find, or what I have found, is there's seasons, right? We encounter them, obviously nature is our greatest, representation of seasons. And I think sometimes we don't equate that into the seasons of our life. And so I believe what I've learned to be able to now fast forward from that start point 20 years is this adaptability to the various seasons of my life. And so when I started teaching, like as I mentioned earlier, I had two small young children. They weren't even in school yet. Mm-hmm. And since then, I added another one to the mix as well, because I know I mentioned I have three boys. So, my pursuit as a yoga teacher has ebbed and flowed and had adaptability, woven into it that I know has supported sustainability for me to continue now to be able to do this work. And I believe it's all the same work that I'm doing that I charted out to do 20 years ago. I've just been able to let it morph and evolve, and really that curiosity again to take me into different expanded ways to share and connect and be of service again, because those are the two key components from the very beginning that I still align into is service and connection, is the opportunities and the teaching that I'm doing in service and connecting myself to others, but connecting them right to the practice. So, as far as sustainability, I think there has to be an adaptability that what started out, may not be the same now. And it's not going to be. And so I taught for a while. I immersed myself into really trying to be a teacher that could meet the needs of the students and not run away from them, so to speak, when all the things that they don't teach you in teacher training show up, right? That's the people that show up in class. So how was I going to relate to them? How was I going to relate in a way that connected them beyond me, but to the practice? And so I think adaptability supports sustainability. And then the curiosity too, to learn something new. I had been teaching about 10 years in almost when I was called, I felt it, to teach teachers. But then I was terrified again. It's kind of like that first yoga class you teach. But I was like, you know what? I can do this. And because I knew I could have done in past experiences things, it's like, it's just something new. So I think you have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to learn. And then now, as I kind of add another decade to my teaching experience, it has to be this willingness to evaluate. And I've done this for years now, but evaluate and unlearn some things that might have been real significant, I felt in the very beginning. And so adaptability, this curiosity still to I don't know it all, and that would be no fun at all if I did. And so, curious to learn, and then this ability to, check my ego, so to speak, and evaluate that I don't know it all. I'm not going to know it all. And there's some things that possibly my next step is to unlearn it, and pursue. So I hope that kind of helps us to support, that question of sustainability. But I think that adaptability piece, things are always changing and seasons of your life are changing. So how are you going to carry the yoga practice? And if you're a yoga teacher, with you through those varying seasons?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, I can relate a lot. And I feel like, aparigraha is coming to mind when we think about the seasons changing. And if we're in a certain season of our teaching, maybe we're in a place that we really love, like we're enjoying what it is that we're teaching, but for whatever reason, things are changing all the time, as we said, and it's not necessarily fitting your life. So if you're teaching a ton of classes and, when you're in it, you're feeling great, but when you're, driving all over town and you're not making that much money and you're just realizing it's like, my family needs a different type of support that I can provide with this type of practice or this type of teaching style that I'm putting out there. It's like, if you open your palms and allow the adaptability, the sustainability, as you said, can be its companion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not to shy away, again, from, I think for the yoga teacher, it becomes, get the repetition and the experience of teaching those, I call it drop-in classes, teach the classes and teach in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different settings, and then be willing to challenge yourself that, and to understand that you do know and you are ready, right, to offer something expanded. So, maybe the workshop comes in, or, those things are like me. It evolved into workshops, and then it turned into yoga teacher training. And I've mentioned, I have 3 children, 2 of them, one's finished college already, one's in college, one will be heading that way in a couple of years. And for me, generating income from a sustainability was to find a balance between what I was putting out there and getting a return in the balanced exchange for me to contribute to my family and for my boys to go to college. And, that means that adaptability comes in again, to seek ways that I can, like you said, not drive all over the place, but maximize, be efficient with my time, and expand myself at the same time as a teacher and develop and grow.
Yes. Yeah. And, as you were saying, to not shy away, from like the reality of what it is that is in front of us. It's like, I think some teacher trainings out there, and, all props to the teacher trainings that are, making it happen, and they need to make a living, and they need to train teachers in the best way that they can possibly do. But we don't really talk about these things in our 200-hour teacher trainings.
Right.
We talk about like getting that studio teacher training job, and then, happily ever after. That's it.
Exactly.
And there's just so much more to it.
Absolutely. There sure is. And, I, as a teacher trainer, always want to incorporate the things that I know from my experience and what I have found to have success in. I want to equip the trainees that are training with me with that and get them ready, because it's just the foundation, and they got to get ready to do the work. Mm-hmm. And then I think sometimes if we're not careful, Jessica, we can get stuck in this, when I get ready, or when I get another training, or when I get another certification, instead of really doing the work to start implementing what we do know and expanding that into something that could be an expanded offering, that at the same time of what you're giving, you can generate extra income that supports you in the ability to do this work. Because I often say, peace, love, and yoga does not pay the bills. For yoga studios or whoever's listening, like, there's a business element to it, an entrepreneurship that you have to get into that mindset to create sustainability doing this.
Oh, yes. Those peace, love, and yoga vibes do not pay the bills. That, I think if anybody's listening, if that's what you just took from here,
there's your takeaway.
There you go. Yeah, it's so true. It's like, and it's like the 200-hour course can only prepare you so much. If you're not willing to put in the work, then I mean, that's it. That's it for you. And I think probably that's where a lot of people get stuck, is thinking, well, I'm not exactly sure what to do next. So as you were mentioning, like collecting certifications and things that, maybe they're not going to actually use, but it feels like progress. Yeah. I think people get stuck there too. So I love that you're, a voice of truth for, I mean, really, on your podcast and in your teacher trainings, for it's like, no, it's not really like that. It's like this.
Yeah. And isn't, Jessica, there, a disillusionment really, if we're not truthful in these yoga teacher trainings, that just because you get that piece of paper, right, you graduate, like, I mean, bravo. That is a huge accomplishment. But now, right, the work really begins to get out there in the nitty gritty, in the real time, and really do the work. And that's why sometimes it's unfortunate that we have a lot of people rolling through teacher trainings. And it's not that it's always meant for you to become a teacher. Like, a lot of people are doing that for their own personal, depth and study. And why not, use a teacher training to gather all that and that experience. But, there's a lot of them that are rolling out. And I've had conversations with teachers who do not feel equipped to go out and teach a class. And so for me, that's a deal breaker. Like if you leave my training, my 200-hour, and you don't feel equipped with the tools right now, it's not like I'm making you into something, like, but I have equipped you with what is necessary to go out there and do the work. And I've given ample time of application in the training to do it. Right. And then you have to dedicate that you're willing to do the work beyond that. But I think there can be a disillusionment that all of a sudden we step out of that 200-hour and poof, we have arrived. We are, this yoga teacher. And I'm sorry, like, some people have a little more of a different skill set already set up for them coming through that. But some, it's like, you're going to have to work a little harder if you really want to pursue this. And the hard work is worth it. I often say it's a worthy endeavor to pursue to be a yoga teacher. It's very worthy.
I love that. I love that. It kind of, what that summed up to me is like, you can give them the tools, but you can't do the work for them.
Absolutely. It's accountability.
Yeah. And when we come out of that safe container of, this, beautiful training, and we're kind of, out on our own, it can get a little scary. Like, it's like, now what?
Absolutely. For sure. It gets lonely too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just so glad that we have, people like you, like mentoring and leading the way, for folks that have that feeling. So I know there are a lot out there who exit their 200-hour and they're not sure what to do next. And sometimes they don't do anything next for the folks that,
Exactly. You can be frozen by that. And I'll go back to that, people waiting till they're ready. Well, being ready means you're prepared. And so, if and this is kind of a call out to those people leading 200-hour trainings to really evaluate, are you equipping your trainees in that way that they are prepared, right? You said it perfectly, right? They're not coming out to, magically have turned into something, right? There's an accountability. They've got to do the work to implement, but are you as a trainer really equipping them with what they need and the practical application of it, and immersing them in practice teaching in a way that they can then, step out and roll right into teaching that class? Because unfortunately, I have had conversations with teachers that don't feel equipped coming out of another training that they've had, and they're seeking another training. And that's just, to me, like, that's just non-negotiable. Like, somebody should not feel that they have to seek another 200-hour unless it's like in a totally different realm of a study.
Sure.
But that's different.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's so much to be said about, taking additional trainings, be it another 200-hour or, CEUs or pursuing your 300 or 500-hour. Like, I think, it's so funny that we're having this conversation, because I was telling my teacher trainees this past weekend, like, check yourself. If you're wanting to take additional trainings, ask yourself, is this because I am avoiding the work? Or do I see value and I'm going to learn something beyond just getting that additional piece of paper and the validation from someone else saying, okay, now you're ready?
Absolutely. Interestingly, too, I am working on a podcast episode on that same concept. But, Jessica, it's really a relevant conversation that I think needs to be had, and helps. I believe it's supportive and it helps. And if we're going to come back to that sustainability, which I am about, longevity and sustainability, my boys, my family, they know that I want to be doing this work for as long as I can, and they believe it. And I think part of it is you got to get real and you have to ask those tough questions. So good for you, for including that in the process, because why would we not want to equip, those that are getting ready to venture out there to do the work with that kind of, mentality and that equipping that really sets them up for, I feel like, success and creating sustainability doing this.
Absolutely. I so agree with that. And I love what you just said there about creating your own sustainability. There's there's not a certification for sustainability as a yoga teacher that I know of.
Right.
Maybe there is. Send us a message if you know of one. You're defining what that means for you as a teacher. And, let's say someone's graduated from their 200-hour, they're putting in the work. Maybe they are, as many of us do, as we first start teaching, or even further down the road, they say yes to literally every opportunity. And they find themselves, as we were saying, driving all over town, and, they're, not making a ton of money, and they're starting to reevaluate what it is at their core that they're trying to accomplish. And they might be finding themselves at the brink of burnout. So what would you say to that teacher, to help them kind of reevaluate and right the ship?
Well, I believe burnout comes from a disconnection. And most often when I have the conversations with teachers, and this is something that's a checkpoint, I'm speaking from personal, my personal checkpoints too, when I have found that I feel burnout, I'm losing passion to go drive to this class or whatever it may be, I always check myself of, am I in balance with my personal dedication and my personal practice? And what I have found in the conversations I have had is when teachers come to me, with kind of distraught in a way of like, I just, I don't feel inspired. I don't, all these things. And they're feeling like, burnout, and they're feeling like, I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. My first question always to them is, how is your personal practice? And for some of them, a lot of them, it's been either it's out of balance, you're teaching way too much, you are not a student of the practice any longer, faithfully or dedicated in a daily rhythm of that, or scary, it's non-existent. Now I think sometimes when people come to me asking for, they're wanting me to give them some secret, like great, amazing sequence that's going to inspire them. But I get them in tune with that of like, get and check and reconnect back to why you even began and wanted to teach in the beginning. Right. And it's probably because you love the practice. For me, it was a gift I received. I want to give it to others. But teaching yoga, right, and loving yoga are two different things, like, and being a student of the practice are two different skill sets. And so if you're just teaching, you're really disconnecting yourself from the personal connection. And so that's my kind of go-to always, is like, get back in a reconnection to your personal practice, spending time, not with the primary focus to be like, so I can create the sequence again, but to be inspired, to tap internally into something that I believe when burnout shows up is because we're probably focused more externally on what's going on around us. We get caught up in the hustle. We get caught up with what we see other teachers doing. We think that means, what we should do. We get caught up with perfection and that progress element, like you mentioned earlier, that I need to take another training. I need to, I need to consume, as opposed to I really need to just give myself time to absorb. And Jessica, I'll take it back too to seasons. And I spoke to this recently in my podcast, but I talked to seasons. Some people can do this, and some it's just you have to get a little creative with it. But sometimes the reason of the season of respite has to show up, meaning you remove yourself, from your teaching schedule, and you give yourself time to reconnect back to your personal practice. And from my experience, when I give myself that time in that season, I'm rejuvenated. I reconnect. I get clear again on why I'm doing the work, and I'm able to look inside more, and I create consistency again to come back to that. And in turn, when we dedicate that time as a student of the practice, it's inevitably, from my experience, I can only speak from, it's going to translate, it's going to spill over into our teaching. It's going to refresh us, rejuvenate us, and we'll be able to connect and serve the students that are coming to practice with us again. Now, one little thing about people running all over the place, I believe that you need to look at your schedule and have structure. I believe in efficiency and being skillful in this work. So time management is a key thing that yoga teachers need to really look at as a skill set that sometimes I think gets overlooked. So from a business side of things, of looking at what you do and your time management, are you being efficient in your energy exchange and in your finances and everything you're doing to run all over the place? Is it really efficient? So an evaluation needs to be made. Maybe you don't teach where you normally teach anymore. Maybe you pursue different avenues of teaching. And once again, seasons show up again. Maybe it's a season again for you to pursue something different to help ward off that burnout.
Oh my gosh, I'm just nodding my head like furiously over here. That's just so good. Yeah, I think, it's so interesting too, this concept of seasons. I love that you're sharing this, Sandy, because it's like, this is literally how our planet works.
Yeah, yes.
And like, it's so foreign to us in some ways when it comes to our own work. And I think it's just society. It's like, we're always in, like, our society seems to always be in this time of like production, like must produce. And what would happen if you could allow yourself to, kind of return to, what the earth is actually experiencing and in the different seasons. And, maybe that doesn't perfectly align with the seasons that we experience each year, but if you could take some inspiration from that and remove yourself, as you were saying, to get clear. And, maybe it's not for a full, exact season, but just some time to reassess and recalibrate and return.
Absolutely. And I mean, give yourself permission to do that. Sometimes I think we can make it hard on ourselves. And I even, as of recently, a teacher that I work with in my mentorship program, we were in this discussion, and she felt, and this is very valid, she felt that if she removed herself from a regular teaching position, that she was no longer a yoga teacher. And so very valid, something for us to explore is that you are a yoga teacher, whether you're on the regular teaching schedule or not. And in fact, you removing yourself to take time, and then within the time of respite and reconnecting to your personal practice, you can still be preparing yourself and be ready to enter back into the ongoing, right, or a regular teaching experience. You can still work on those things and keep your skill set fresh as you are in the season of respite and reconnection, for yourself personally. So it's not that, unless you're out there on somebody's schedule, that you're no longer a teacher. But that was really a valid point for her to bring up of something she was experiencing. So I feel certain that probably somebody listening has felt that same way. So I'm just going to say, I give you permission, and I hope you give yourself permission to take that time, because if you want to have lasting longevity and sustainability in this work, just like the seasons that are right in front of us, there's a season of turning inward, and a season, of taking that in order for a rebirth to come, and, and an emergence of something to come from that season. So for sure, nature is a beautiful teacher for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I'm that's so generous that you shared from that recent conversation with your mentee, because I'm sure, and I even know in conversations with my own teaching community within that people have said that exact thing. So I know that that's a common misconception for teachers. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you could go back to any point in your career, any previous version of Sandy,
oh gosh.
and tell her something, just whisper in her ear and say something that would save her a headache or a sleepless night, what would it be?
Well, it's interesting when you sent me these questions to kind of, ruminate on to prepare for our conversation.
Mhm.
That was a very interesting one. And it really is interesting because it's coming off of, Jessica, and rolling out of the month of April was a big month for me. And at the end of April, I turned 50 years old.
Oh, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. And you talk about reflection and so this question prompts reflection for me. And so the month and everybody kind of reminding me of that big birthday I was getting ready to encounter, which to me, I'm just grateful, right, for another year. It's a number. I'm grateful to be in that number.
Yes.
But it does, those moments or those monumental things that happen really create, to me, and birthdays in particular, reflection points. So your question added to that reflection. And I'm thinking, I'm grateful for, here, I'll go back, that every season of my life, every decade now that I can have accumulated in my life, and the varying life circumstances, which I've had hard times. So don't get me wrong when you're listening to me, like I've had some hardness of life, and we all do in humanity. And so if I'm looking back to a younger version of myself, or possibly, in the very beginning when I stepped in to teach that first yoga class, I think from a broad stroke, I would say spend more time focusing on the interior of the experience you're having, and how you're being versus all the things you're doing. And I think we're in a society, we're in a culture, it's a way of life now that we're all focusing outward and looking, right? We're scrolling, we're looking at all these things that people around us are doing, or they're presenting to us that they're doing. So it can be, we can quickly get wrapped up in looking to the exterior. It's kind of like the yoga practice, right? We use the asana, the poses, right, as vehicles to get us inside. Like how am I being versus what I'm doing? So I think I would really support. I think I was intuitive at that point in my younger years of some of these things. I just maybe didn't know what to call it, but I would reinforce that to stay focused, on the interior, not to be consumed with myself, but to not be distracted by the exterior. And from a teaching standpoint, to not fall into, and I have fallen somewhat, but not too far, into the trap of distraction sometime and comparison, and thinking that what others were doing, what other teachers that appeared to me seemed successful, right? They were on this platform. For me to not fall into a trap of comparison, that my journey as a teacher needed to look like that, and to always hone back into the congruency of, like, I have a unique gift as a teacher. I have a unique sharing of the practice. And so that's where I'm a huge advocate, consume, educate yourself, right? Get trained. I want you to be efficient out there teaching, but give yourself time to absorb, give yourself time to apply, because no one can share or teach the practice like you. So no training, right, is going to give you that. You have to give yourself that permission to go inside, to evaluate it for yourself, and to share from that beautiful space, because we all, and teachers that are listening, have a unique pathway of sharing the practice. There will be some things that are, I think are the easy skill set things, but you really tapping into your being, like who you are as the teacher, and what, that aligns into, and your intent. That, again, Jessica, I'll say from my experience, will align you into doing this work for a long time and sustaining it for a long time.
Oh my gosh. I'm almost like a little misty eyed because, like, I could just feel that, like, that's so generous. And I got a lot out of, I just know other people did too. Like, that's just so incredible. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Such a good insight. Yeah. So for the folks that are listening, and myself, how can we work with you? Tell us a little bit more.
Well, my biggest, I guess, thing that I'm about, and my project, and, my purpose, so to speak, right now is, I've had those seasons I've mentioned. I've taught the classes, I've taught the workshops, the trainings. I love to do all those things. I still do those things. But last summer, I was sitting with this kind of, I think it was on a car ride somewhere. And I was just kind of like ruminating, like, what now? Like, what do I do? And so from that, it kind of, I could fall into what I've always known and done, which I've picked up some, efficiency and effectiveness and training and doing those things. But then it was like, no, I think now I really want to equip yoga teachers, right? I have a series of experiences and things that I can share with other teachers. And like we've already talked about, it can get lonely out there, those rolling out of 200-hour teacher trainings, and those who have been teaching for a while even can feel lonely and don't know who to turn to kind of sift through things, get clarity on their direction. So my Beyond Yoga Teacher Training mentorship program was kind of birthed last summer out of that revelation of like, this is now what you are going to offer. So a couple of years ago, I'm going on 2 years now, my Beyond Yoga Teacher Training podcast came into fruition from the encouragement from a young new yoga teacher. And she really encouraged me to create the podcast. So it once again was one of those new things that I was willing to be curious and learn, right? And I'm still learning, how to do that, but support. But it really has aligned with what I know and what's congruent with where I am in my season now as a teacher, is to support those, right, beyond that yoga teacher training. Like I support with my podcast with a lot of episodes that, like we've talked about, things that aren't covered in yoga teacher training, the real-time things. I can only mock up so many things in my teacher trainings I offer, like it's the real-time experiences. Yeah. And so that resource is out there for yoga teachers. And then in conjunction with that is my mentorship program. And so that is a one-to-one, it's a unique relationship developed. I don't offer a cookie cutter program for you to go through. I want to know what you've got going on. I want to support you from my experience and equip you to give clarity, because this can get very vast in depth of like, I don't even know what to do, like we've said already. So that program comes out of that. Now I do offer too, and I want to let listeners know that kind of an entry point of just getting to know teachers. And I love to meet new teachers, is I offer a 45-minute free mentoring session. So all you do is go to my website and you sign up for that. And we meet and we get to know each other, and I get to understand better where you are in your teaching journey and get to understand if, there's a way I can support you through the mentorship program. And so I am so inspired by all the teachers out there doing the work. I often say I'm your biggest fan. I want to support you. And I am grateful that I've been able to connect with so many people really around the globe. And it's just truly continued to be the gift and that service and connection that has fueled me since I began teaching 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of gift, like that's so incredible. Like I love that you listened. Like this is something that I teach my clients, is like when people are asking you for something specific in your business, like listen, like what nugget can you pull from that? And you listen to a new teacher who said, I would love for you to have a podcast. And it turned into this mentorship program where you're really serving these new teachers in such a deep, custom, personal way. Like that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it really, Jessica, is beyond what anything I ever even imagined, but I'm so grateful for that encouragement from that teacher. And, like I've said, I'm a details and I'm a talker. So it was like the perfect platform for me to share, but really, not to just share to hear myself talk, but to really give. Like, it's kind of like I had accumulated. It's like, what do I do with this? And so it was one of those little crossroads again of like, what do I do that feels of service? And it's like, now I want to pour into these teachers out there doing this work, because as we've talked this whole episode, I want you to be doing this work 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Yeah. I want you to feel encouraged. I want you to feel inspired, and I want you to feel supported, because I felt like what I saw out there wasn't a lot of that being offered. And I thought, I can do that. And I want to do that. And it's just been very rewarding and reciprocated to me as a gift in the encounters and the relationships I've developed with those that I am working with.
Well, that's so beautiful. So tell us how we can find you. Tell us how we can sign up for your free 45-minute mentoring session, all that good stuff.
Well, I have a website. It's sandyraper.com. So SANDYRAPER.com. Lots of resources. My podcast is probably my huge, our largest resource on there, but I do have a blog on there, and I have some other kind of free resources for teachers or just yoga enthusiasts. And that is available on there. You can find all the information to work with me, which would include booking that first call for us to get to know each other. Like I said, it's free and it's very accessible. So you just find that through my website. And then I'm on Instagram, Sandy Raper Yoga. You can find me on there. The podcast has its own page as well. It's the BYTT podcast. And I'm on Facebook. I'll probably say, Instagram's probably where I show up the most. I am on Facebook as far as Sandy Raper Yoga as well. And I try to keep that updated and keep some information out there to support yoga teachers in particular and support those who are just trying to develop in their yoga practice.
Well, thank you so much for this. You are incredible. I'm just so grateful that we got to have this chat and to share your message with the teachers that are listening, because I know that you're going to help even more people than you already have. And it's just so beautiful. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jessica. And I appreciate you and I appreciate the work you're doing. And, I just often say, I wish we could all see these little dots of connection, running across in the threads, and we're all really in this together. It doesn't have to be lonely. And all we have to do is just really reach out like you did to me, right? And connect and just expand and grow this message of support. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. I couldn't agree more. I can't wait for this to post. Thanks again.
I know, me too. Thank you.
Sandy is such an incredible light. I just had so much fun talking with her, and her experience in yoga and kind of riding the wave in the different seasons and finding herself in different portions of her business is so incredible. And I'm just so glad that we got to spend that time together in learning and in community. She is such an incredible resource. So definitely go give her a follow. She's over at Sandy Raper Yoga and also at ByTT Podcast. You can find her podcast on any of the podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. It's Beyond Yoga Teacher Training. And then head over to her website, sandyraper.com. If you would like to sign up for her free consult, that's an incredible gift. 45 minutes with such an experienced teacher and understanding how she could support you from a mentoring aspect is something you should definitely take advantage of. So go check that out. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Send me a DM on Instagram. It's at jessicacross.co. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. Have you experienced burnout in your teaching career? Because I know I have, and I feel like this is something that we don't talk about enough as teachers. So I'd love to be in community with you and share that experience. So hit me up in the DMs over on Instagram and let me know what you thought of this episode. I hope to catch you on the next chat. Sending love until then.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Off the Mat podcast, and give yourself some gratitude for taking action in your wellness business journey. Please share this episode with someone you know who could use a fresh dose of inspiration. And we'd be thrilled if you would rate, review, and subscribe to Marketing Off the Mat on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Want to share an idea with Jessica? DM her at jessicacross.co on Instagram to continue the conversation or find out how she can help you take the next right step in your business. Until next time, stay inspired and keep showing up.